All right. Hi, Linda. Welcome today.
Hi,
Well,
Janine. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
welcome everyone to our Sage Intacct webinar today. We're glad you're here with us and we're excited to share information with you about Sage Intacct and how it can transform your organization. My name is Janine Shear. I'm a senior manager here with Abdo, Eick, and Meyers, leading our technology and data services, with Sage Intacct being an important part of how we serve our clients and how we can make a difference for their organizations. I have a background in audit, consulting, working as a controller and CFO, and I have a passion for technology and for automation. With that, we will move ahead and we'll see here what our agenda is for today. Before we do get started, I want to let you know that any questions, please submit them in the question and answer box. We will get to the end and answer as many as we can. Use the chat function too to let us know if you're having any technology or any sound issues. And please know we are recording this session and we'll send out a link to that recording after the session is completed. Here's where we're going during today. We'll do a couple of brief introductions about myself, about Abdo, Eick, and Meyers. We'll talk about why Sage Intacct is best in class, the story, why technology matters, and really the benefits along visibility, flexibility, and automation. We'll wrap up at the end with some time for some open discussion and questions and answers. So I shared just a little bit about myself and my role here at Abdo, Eick, and Meyers. I do love everything about technology and about automation. I love this product. I love learning all about it and how it can benefit our clients. And I'm excited today that Linda Pinion is with us, and she will be providing that on-site demo here for us. Linda, will you talk a little bit about yourself?
I would love to, but first I just want to say what a pleasure it is to work with Janine and her team. Being involved with our partners and understanding how I can help them be successful. Janine and I have already had the opportunity to work together, and when she says that she has a passion for this product, she absolutely does. And so I just wanted to give her a quick shout out. You know, the role that I play at Sage Intacct is one that's really taken a great brush across lots of different areas. I touch product management. I work with the marketing team. I work with our partners. I deliver events like this, customer meetups, user groups. And one of the things that I really enjoy doing is showcasing and highlighting the strength of our product and how we are focused on helping businesses be successful. So today I'm going to share a lot of that information with you. I'm also aware that you want to see software, so that is a very big part of what you're going to see today. We want to make sure that when you walk away, you have an interest, and we've piqued that interest so that you want to see more and learn more about Sage Intacct, and certainly work with Janine and her team. So thank you for the opportunity, Janine. Happy to be here today.
Thank you very much, Linda. It's a pleasure having you here with us. So one of the things we wanted to mention today, and I won't spend too much time talking, but why are we so passionate about this? Why did we look at becoming a partner with Sage Intacct? And a few of those things really are, well, we listened to our clients. We heard them when they said that they were having troubles with the lack of real-time access to the information that they need to be able to pivot and to make important decisions. They're spending countless hours each month extracting, compiling, manipulating, sending information, rather than having that available to each person when and where and how they need it, anytime, anywhere. They're having issues too with managing and reporting on multiple entities. If you have multiple companies where you are logging in, logging out, booking manual intercompany entities, having troubles with manual or with the consolidated reporting, that's certainly an area that Sage Intacct shines, and we want to help our clients. Another area too, when we're listening to our clients, is they have separate systems that are standalone. They don't talk to one another. They're not integrated. So again, it's extra manual effort. And when they're not integrated, it's not only that manual effort, it's the possibility of having manual error introduced into the system. So that's what we heard when we were listening to the clients and why we wanted to become a Sage Intacct partner. Next, we love the product. It's intuitive, it's easy to learn. I love that we only pay for what we need with Sage Intacct. You add on the pieces that you need when you need them. It has unbelievable reporting, including, as I mentioned, that consolidated reporting, the ability to slice and dice and look at information different ways, configurable dashboards to provide information that's tailored to each user is really important too. And one of the things we love about the product is the ongoing client care aspect. We think this is the right thing to do at Abdo, Eick, and Meyers. It's the ongoing basic support that's available from our team that's included in the annual software fees. If you ever have been on hold for hours with another software vendor or had to pay every time that you pick up the phone and you call them, you know how painful that is. We'll guide you through the implementation and we'll be there for you ongoing. Next is we look at the reputation. It's very important for us to partner with a company that is like us and one that is highly reputed. We have Sage Intacct, the only preferred provider of the AICPA, the people who know accounting and great financial management systems. Ranked #1 in satisfaction on G2, called a visionary leader by Gartner, and best yet, Sage Intacct has a 95% customer renewal rate. Customers love it as much as we do. Finally, the cloud value, really the ability to work from anywhere. We saw, especially in 2020, when companies had to pivot and move to a remote workforce, we saw that an on-premise solution was not what they needed to be able to do that and to be able to make changes quickly. So with that, people sometimes ask, well, it's cloud, but is it ever down? Over the last 12 months, if you look in the upper right-hand side, the system has been available 99.978% of the time. And this information is always posted on their website, always available. What I like too about the cloud value is the software is automatically updated 4 times a year. No longer do we have to plan an expensive downtime and upgrades every couple of years. These happen automatically. You always have the most up-to-date software. And of course, being a cloud product, it reduces IT hard and soft costs. You don't need to have that local hardware to install the software. You don't need to have that IT staff. It's really for all of those reasons and more that we're seeing growth companies and all companies embrace Sage Intacct. So Linda, we'll move to the next. Speaking of growth companies, there are over 16,500 companies that are on Intacct, and some of these companies too in the high growth areas. So they're using Intacct to automate their processes, eliminate their business challenges, really helping them to grow and adapt to changing conditions. The most successful IPOs of the last 2 years are running on Intacct because of that flexibility to respond and to scale. One of the most important things to note too is that Sage Intacct is focused on relationships and their customers' long-term success. Everyone at Sage Intacct is compensated on customer satisfaction. This is important to Sage Intacct and it's important to us at Abdo, Eick, and Meyers.
So thank you, Janine, for the kind words about the product and the company. You know, some of the things that Janine mentioned there, I really want to tag on to those, but maybe from a little bit different perspective. So understanding why Janine and her team selected Sage Intacct is important. So why should you also consider Sage Intacct? Well, let me tell you a little bit more about the history of the product. First of all, it is a product that has always been a cloud-based solution. It's always been a solution that is considered a different model, and that model is called best in class. And what does best in class really mean? It means that you have the freedom to choose the best solution for every area of your business. We, Sage Intacct, will be your best in class financial management solution. We are going to partner with other best in class applications to make sure that your business has the absolute best solution across the board. Now, the reason that we can do that is because of the way we were architected. And this is, again, from the very beginning, which was back in 1999. We were architected to be open and to be able to get to those other data points, those other solutions, and bring their data in seamlessly into our financial engine. Part of what we do from a reporting standpoint is to accommodate what we deem multi-dimensional reporting. And one of the things that Janine talked about was the strong reporting that we have. We'll be looking at that today. It's all because of the way the data is structured and the way that we are capturing that data. Of course, we talked about easy integration to other solutions. Part of that integration includes being able to pull data and have that data be multidimensional from the other applications as well. We pride ourselves in being the solution that will remain the solution for many years to come. And that's because you're in Jello here, you're not in concrete. You have the ability to change those business processes as your company changes. So we're going to help you automate and streamline those processes, keep you up to date and where you need to be without needing to re-implement. And then of course, you know, our overarching goal here is to make sure that you have the visibility to be strategic, more so than tactical. We want to give you that vision of where you are today and where you want to go tomorrow. So if you look at the diagram on the right-hand side, just a little bit about what you're seeing here. We are in the center of that hub there. We're going to provide your core financials. So in that lower left-hand corner, you see some of the core financials that are part of that accounting bundle, if you will. And on the right-hand side, you see some additional modules. And as Janine said, you're going to select and choose what you need, which means you will subscribe and pay for what you need. So not everyone perhaps needs contract revenue management as an example. However, if that's what's driving your billing in your organization, then it's comforting to know that that is a solution that is available. We also at the top point out some of the key industries that we work in and support. We are always interested in making sure that what we are developing and releasing on a quarterly basis addresses all of our industries. So we always have things that are improving our user experience. However, we're keeping up with what's going on in our key verticals like nonprofit, hospitality, healthcare, perhaps wholesale distribution, and one of our newer areas, construction and real estate. So this is why we believe Sage Intacct is the best solution for you. A little bit more of a picture of what that best in class might look like. We call this a solution architect diagram. And as Janine pointed out, we partner with many different other applications. This is just an example. This is certainly not the end all be all. We partner with over 240 marketplace partners. If you already have some applications that you're using today and you love them and they're working fine, then you have the option to keep those solutions and integrate those in to Sage Intacct. As an example, you may be using a CRM solution like Microsoft CRM or perhaps Salesforce. That information can be integrated in. You may be running payroll through ADP or Paychex or another payroll provider. You may be using some AP automation or using a tax service like Avalara. All of this means that this information can come in seamlessly using web services and creating APIs, so automated program interfaces into our financial engine. Again, over 240 seamless integrations. This number changes on a quarterly basis because we are continuing to evaluate and certify partners with their solutions. This is a little bit of a broad brush of some of those partners by area of expertise. And some of these names you'll recognize. Perhaps you're using some of these tools and products today. Again, this is not everyone. You can do some research around those marketplace partners from our website, and you can see more detail from their individual data sheets. What we do recognize is that most of our customers are integrating to 2 or more partners. Now, there's a huge benefit to that. You've already invested time and you've educated your people and you're already comfortable with that solution. So this is a way for you to protect that investment and at the same time get the best in class financial management solution. So now I want to move to giving you a little bit about the software itself. Before we do that, let me lay out my agenda. And I like to do this because I want you to understand where I'm going and what we're going to be looking at today. So we've got 3 different areas that we want to focus on. The first one is visibility. And in this area, we're going to look at what we call role-based dashboards. I like to refer to them as actionable dashboards. And you'll see that when we land on a dashboard, we have access to information that we can view, we can drill into that information, and we can really empower a user to have all of that information at their fingertips. That also leads us to what do we want to see on those dashboards? Now, for most of us, we want to see reports that are important to us in our specific role. There's more than reporting that we can put on a dashboard. So we'll take a look at all of the different types of components that you can place on the dashboard. This is going to give you not only the visibility to what's important to you today, but it's also going to help you make decisions for the future. So all of that information right at your fingertips. The second area that we're going to go into is what I call flexibility. And underlying in the software, there are some foundational pieces that allow us to remain flexible. And part of that is scalability. So today you may be an organization or company that has 1 or 2 entities, what we call entities. Think of entity as company, separate tax ID. You have the ability to set up unlimited entities. So let's just say that you're in acquisition mode and you decide to acquire some additional companies. You want to make sure that your software solution is going to accommodate that and that it can grow with you. So rest assured with Sage Intacct, you can have as many entities as you choose to. And what you'll see from a reporting standpoint is that you can slice and dice that data in many different ways, entity being one of them. That also means that you can consolidate that way as well. So you can take it apart, but you can also put it back together. There's also a way for you to configure your applications. So one of the things that we talked about was this being a cloud-based solution. What does that really mean? Well, it means that those 16,500 companies that are utilizing Sage Intacct are all running the same version of software. So unlike an on-premise solution where you might have different versions or releases of the software, we are all using the same software version. And that means that when I set up Sage Intacct for my company, I may want it to work differently than what Janine wants her company to set it up to work as. So because of that, we allow you to configure and personalize Sage Intacct to how your company wants to use it. So a lot of that configuration is at the application level. It's also around how you define your users, so giving them permissions or not into certain areas. That's all controlled by you. We also have delivered some best practices or some predefined workflow business processes that you can start out with those as a sample or as your guide. And then as you need to, you can change them. You can modify them. You can create new process flows if that's what you are required to do. And then to help you get started with your reporting, we have reporting libraries. So we're going to give you a set of standard reports, ones that you can copy and turn into different versions of financial reports to your liking. So you don't start out with an empty plate. You're going to have a reporting library that you will be able to copy and create from. Now, one of the things that we know about automation is that everyone is sometimes a little bit scared of change. And when someone starts to talk about changing a process, there's usually a lot of work that goes into that. And there's also a lot of thought. And what we want to help you do is to automate and streamline those processes. So again, we're going to give you some standard business process flows. And then we're also going to open that up with something that we call transaction definitions to allow you to create your own definitions of a transaction. You'll see some of that today because I've chosen one of those business processes to share with you. So you can see how you'll be able to start out and use the one that is delivered as part of your configuration, and then be able to change and grow as your process changes. We also want to improve your efficiencies. And one way that we do that is by automating the steps in a process. So you're not re-entering data. The data is going to flow from one step in the process to the next. And that's going to also give you the ability to have one version of the truth. So once you enter that information, we're going to reduce the errors. We're going to make sure that you have the exact information that you need at the transaction level. I mentioned entities. Remember, those are companies. And one of the other steps that's always important to point out is if you're running or managing multiple entities, you may have the need for inner entity. And this is a great automated step for you in Sage Intacct. So if you're one of these organizations that is creating manual journal entries across entities and trying to keep up with who owes who for what, we automate those inter-entity transactions, and we'll take a look at that today. So those are the three areas that we're going to cover. Let's go ahead and jump into Sage Intacct. So I have switched screens. You should be looking at a role-based dashboard. There's a lot of information on this screen. So the first thing I want to do is I just want to give you a little bit of the user experience. This may be your first time to see Sage Intacct. So I want to make sure that you know some of the key areas in which we are focused on in helping you ramp and learn the software faster. So the first thing is I've logged in as the controller today. I've also logged in as a second user. I'll introduce her in just a moment. But Emma is our controller today, and she has landed on her controller dashboard. One of the other things that you'll note here is that I am managing multiple entities in this one instance of Sage Intacct. So if you're coming from another solution where you needed to log in and log out between companies, that goes away with Sage Intacct. With the permissioning that I've set up for Emma, she can transact in any one of these entities. So that's a permission that you'll set up for your different users. In addition to that, there are some different ways that I can set up the permissions for Emma as to what she can get into. So from an application perspective, think of Emma as a super user. You'll see me moving around today as Emma, and you'll see that I can pretty much go anywhere and do anything. So think of her as that super user. Now, speaking of moving around, let me just show you quickly how Emma navigates. So one way to navigate is kind of the old-fashioned way, through a menu-driven system. So you've got two menus here for the application for accounts payable, and all in a setup. And again, very simply, just click on the menu option. It'll take you right into the software. So all of your task activities and reports are here on this menu. There's also an overview menu. This is what we call a process map. And this process map lays out the data elements in the application, the task, which think of that as your day-to-day or monthly activities, and then the reports. So again, clicking on an icon is going to take you right into that area of the software. What you'll also notice here in this pictorial display is, in this case, there are some yellow arrows. I talked about best practices. So this is the best practice that's been delivered for AP. Now, while this is my best practice, this may not be your best practice. So things that you don't do, maybe you don't do bill approval, you don't do an approval for payments, you can turn these functions off and they will be grayed out of your process map. So again, second way to navigate. Third way to navigate, my favorite, is the bookmarks menu. So now I can set up my own personal menu. I can drive based on a menu that I set up. Clicking on any of these areas will take me right to that place in the software. So it gives me a way to eliminate the menu traveling, and it also outlines a process, perhaps in the order in which I do that repetitive process or transaction. So again, you've got multiple ways to navigate. You also can set things up as favorites, and anything that has a gold star next to it could be labeled as a favorite, and then you can create a favorites menu. So lots of ways for you to move around the software. So let's come back. Let's put back on our controller hat, and let's take a look at some of the information that's important to Emma. Now, one of the things that I talked about was having the ability to manage multiple companies or entities in one instance of Sage Intacct. I'll tell a quick story here. I had a prospect who was using QuickBooks, had multiple instances of QuickBooks, and one of their key reasons for looking at Sage Intacct was for better consolidation. It took them 40 to 60 hours to consolidate all of those QuickBooks instances into their consolidated reporting. They did that every single month. So their number one ask was, we need to do a better job at consolidating. We need to do it faster than what we're doing it today. So the way that I presented this to them was, I opened up this screen just the same as I did for you, and I said, I just saved you 40 hours. And they said, oh my gosh, 40 hours, how did you do that? This is a consolidated view. So when you look at these boxes here, we refer to them as performance cards. These boxes are across all of the entities that I am managing. So this $53,000 here is a culmination of all expenses across all three of my entities. Now, as the controller, I may not want to look at that consolidated view. So now I can take my dashboard filters and I can filter this down to just a single company or a single entity. And you'll notice that the dashboard represented itself, and now my expenses are $30,000 because I'm just looking at one entity. So having the ability to slice and dice the data at the dashboard level is because of these dashboard filters, and because I've used something called dimensions to tag my transactions when I initially keyed the transactions in. And we'll take a look at dimensions as we go along. So just remember, dimensions are a way to slice and dice or filter the data. It's what gets us that multi-dimensional reporting. Now, there are other ways that I can filter the data. I could filter it by item, or if I was a project-driven company, I could filter it by project. I can also look at the data by date. So I have an as of date here. So that gives me the ability to do the look back and see data in a previous time frame. Now, what I also am happy to do is to look at what's behind these boxes. So it's kind of like, I want to see what this $53,000 is, where it's coming from. So I have the ability to drill into this information, and drilling into it means that I now see the next view of that data. And I can see in this case, I'm comparing that data, my actual to my budget. And if I hone in on one of these areas like office supplies, I can see that I'm already in trouble because I'm already over budget. If I want to understand more about that, I can drill to another level and see the detail in the ledger that shows me exactly where this $7,600 is coming from. Additionally, I can drill in and see the detail of any of these transactions. So in this case, it's a bill from AT&T. And what you'll notice here is it looks like the bill has been duplicated. However, it's in fact one invoice that I have tagged to different locations and different departments. And I've done that all because of the way I want to distribute this expense. So it was a bill from AT&T for $207.86. I entered that bill into AP. I, in fact, attached a bill as a diagram or as a copy of that bill to that transaction. And then I coded it to office supplies. What I also did was I tagged it to a rule, an allocation rule that said, I want you to allocate this based on the rule that I've set up, which is a percentage rule. So I asked Intacct to do the math for me, to take this 207.86 and to split it across these locations and departments. So think about when you get a bill today, let's say it's for professional services or for marketing, and you want to distribute it or code it across different areas of your business. This is the way that this rule works. You set it up, you set the rule up based on a percentage or a flat dollar amount, and then you apply the rule at AP bill entry time. What you'll also notice is from location all the way over to warehouse, these are examples of dimensions that I can use to tag this transaction to. There are in fact 12 predefined dimensions in Sage Intacct. 7 of them are predefined in the core accounting bundle, and others are based on subscription. So as an example, if you were buying something and it was for a specific project, you might want to tag it to that project so that you could then run reports both from a revenue perspective and from an expense perspective at the project level. So any one of these dimensions can be used. You can also tag to multiple dimensions, and you can report across multiple dimensions. So this is the first encounter really of understanding a little bit more about dimensions and how dimensions are going to help you with your reporting. As we come back to the dashboard, all of these performance cards are the same, work the same way. They can all be drilled into. You can have comparisons to previous quarters or periods. In my case, I compared to a budget. You can have your visual indicators. So I like to think of this as quick business insight. The second area that I want to focus on in this dashboard is a report. So this is something that you'll see on many different dashboards, a lot of different reports. In the controllers area, having a profit and loss report is probably a key report that they would want to have on their dashboard. What you see here is a dashboard report that has incorporated all 3 of my entities in this one report. So I've got them lined up side by side. I also have the ability to come in and drill into any of this information. So now we're on the revenue side as opposed to the expense side. I have gone in and changed my accounts so that I am now looking at revenue by product category. And again, being able to drill into this and look at the detail. Now we're looking at customer invoices. We're able to drill down to that lower level. We're able to see that this, in fact, has had some payments made against it, and I can drill into those payments. I can also see the attachments. I can see how it was coded from a revenue perspective. And then I can drill one more layer down to the source transaction, which is in fact the invoice, the sales invoice to the customer for $65,000. And now I see the detail of what I invoiced them for. So I see the ID of the item, the description, the channel that it was sold against, the warehouse and the location it was delivered from, the department that I've tagged it to, the quantity and the appropriate pricing. This gives me all the information about the invoice, but what's even more important is I have a history tab, and this history tab now identifies every step in the process. So each step in the process is documented. So this started as a sales order, it went to a shipping step, so a pick, pack, ship step, and then went to creating that customer invoice. Each one of these steps in the process, user date and timestamp, so you have that full audit trail of what's happened. So if I'm talking to the customer, I have all the information and I can answer their questions while they're on the phone. If I'm talking to someone internally, I have all that information at my fingertips. I don't need to go dig in the filing cabinet. Once this invoice is paid or partial payments are made against it, I also have the cash receipt information here. So I can now convey that information. Yes, we got your check, we received it, we've deposited it. So I have all that information again right here on the screen, and I can convey that to my customer or to my internal person. Now, let's come back to this P&L report, and let's say we want to look at it a little bit differently. So now let's come in. Because I have permission, I'm the controller, I can change this report on the fly. So I've dropped myself into the financial report writer. This is one that's designed for the business user. It's not any type of programming language. So this is where I have created this profit and loss report. And I've created it by using some account groups, and those account groups have brought in all the information that it takes to see and look at net income. One of the things that I also want to do is I want to change the level of detail. So I'm going to use my dimensions to do that. And at this point, I'm going to choose a dimension for item. And by changing this, I'm going to get a different view of this report. So now what I'm able to see is I'm able to see that I want to be able to take this revenue and I want to expand it by dimension. And I'm going to choose item. And let's come back and look at this report. And now what you see is instead of the revenue broken out by product category, you see the individual items that I have sold. Again, I'm showing you that across all three of my companies. So I can see that detail of the individual items that I've sold. I didn't have to create a new report. I just changed the level of detail in the formatting, and I did this on the fly. I can also change things around the columns. So when you think about looking at the data, you notice that I had 3 columns out there, each one of my entities in a separate column. I did that because I said I wanted it to expand by location. I can expand that column by those same dimensions. So if I wanted it by customer instead of by location, or I wanted it by department, I can change that on the fly and change the column headers. So the data that's going into those columns would be different. So understanding that this is a tool that we're going to deliver to you with about 30 financial reports already created for you in a report library, where you'll be able to look at those reports, copy them, and create your own version, or use them exactly as they are delivered. You'll also be happy to know that there is a full audit trail on everything that is done and changed in the financial report writer. And again, you can certainly copy any of those reports to create new ones. There's a couple of other things that I want to talk about on the dashboard. One is this component here called Collaborate. So one of the things that is important is always understanding why you made a transaction or why something got changed. Collaborate is the social media layer within Sage Intacct, and this is what allows you to document at the transaction level. So as an example, there was a purchase requisition that was entered by an employee, and that purchase requisition was being reviewed by their manager, and the manager had some questions. And so as the manager was looking at it, she used Collaborate to send a message to the employee user. And, you know, she wanted to convey a message. Maybe she had a question. So this is how you would self-document and track those conversations about a specific transaction. Here in the dialog box, it's easy for you to converse with someone. All you need to do is identify who you want to talk to, key in your message, click share, and it will send them that message immediately. They'll get it in email form. They'll also get it in their collaboration feed, and that collaboration feed is here. Now, what I've done is I've put that on my dashboard so that I can see that at all times. So this gives me that feed of everything along with the hyperlink back to that transaction. So a great way for you to document transactions, certainly helps when you're going through your audits. Now, lots of other information on Emma's dashboard here. You even see some graph representation as well. You can define as many of these dashboards as you choose to. You can drag and drop things around. You can change the format and the colors. You can certainly make these as personal as you choose to. I have a lot of dashboards. You'll see a lot of role-based dashboards here. You'll also see dashboards by a particular functional area like inventory or purchasing. These are dashboards that I've created. And again, they can contain whatever information is important to you in your specific role. So that's a little bit about dashboards and reporting. The next area that I want to share with you is just a little bit more about entities. Entities are the same thing as companies. I have 3 of them in this instance. What's also important is the ability to have that inner entity mapping. So this is something that I talked about initially. If you are making transactions across those entities, you're probably doing that through a manual journal entry today. You can set up that inner entity account mapping in Intacct. We'll do the do tos and do froms for you automatically, creating those journal entries. So what this map shows is the account numbers that I am going to instruct Intacct to use when it makes that journal entry. Those journal entries get posted into a separate journal, an IET journal. That way they're isolated, easy for you to reconcile, and you can certainly see the ins and outs, drillable, actionable down to the source transaction. So all of this mapping is done for you automatically and eliminates you having to create those journal entries. The other thing that's flexible is looking at some of the company information, you know, being able to import data. So we've created templates that you can populate and get your data in quickly. This is also an area where you can configure and personalize an application. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier was that if Janine and I both were using Sage Intacct in our company, we may want to use accounts payable differently. And this is where you personalize accounts payable to how you choose to use that application. It's really about turning on, turning off functionality. You know, maybe you want to use credit limits and credit ratings in AP, and Janine doesn't want to. So I have the option to turn it on. She may want to leave it turned off. Another way that you might turn on or turn off functionality is around what dimensions you want to be active in accounts payable. Or perhaps you want to use some approval processing and you want to turn that on. So this is where you would personalize that. And then of course, all of us want to see our AP aging. Maybe I want to see my buckets designed in this format. Someone else wants to see their buckets 7 days, 14 days, 21 days. So they want some different bucket labels than what I do. So now I have the ability to set up 3 different formats for my aging. So this is how all of us can use the same software, but we can use it the way our company wants to use it and what works best for us. If we come back to this company section, you'll notice that there's a lot of setup here. Certainly this is an area that you would permission based. Not everyone needs to get in here. There's also an administration area here. This is where you're going to initially turn on subscriptions and configure them. It's also where you're going to set up your users, and you even have the ability to try different roles. So we've set up some different examples for you. So this company section is really part of what you will look at from an implementation perspective. And it's also what helps you grow and change as your business or your company changes. Now, the last area that I want to go into is really to show you around a business process. And to do that, I've chosen to start out by showing you an overview of the procure to pay process. So I've jumped into purchasing, and the process that you see lined out here is the best business practice. So this was already set up and configured to start out by creating a purchase requisition. And then I've got an approval step in here to get that requisition approved. Once it's approved, I'm going to convert it to a purchase order. I'm then going to receive a shipment in, and then I'm going to receive my vendor invoice. So these steps here are already predefined. However, I'm going to start my story over here as an employee user. So a couple things I want to point out. Nikki is my employee, and you'll notice that Nikki can only transact in one entity, and that entity is entity 100. So the only thing that Nikki can do in purchasing is purchase requisitions. So everything that I just pointed to is because of Nikki being an employee user and how Nikki is set up through permissionings. So as Nikki, if I come in and look, I can see that I've already entered a requisition. I've saved it as draft to save us some time. So let's come back into that requisition. So think of Nikki as being out in another location. She needs to get some brochures from neighborhood printers. She's entered this requisition. She's coded it to office supplies, and she's put in the expected price of $120. Now at this point, she's ready to submit it. And when she submits it, it's going to submit that into the approval routing. Now in this case, I've set up the routing to be Nikki's manager, and I've also set up a role-based dashboard for workflow approval. So if I come in as Emma, I now can see that I have a requisition here that is requiring my attention. So if I were Emma, I'd want to look at it. And viewing this shows me the requisition that Nikki has entered. It also shows me the attachment, so I could have a picture of that brochure so I could see it. If I had questions about it, remember I've got this collaborate down here. I could send Nikki a question. I can also start to look at the history of this transaction, and I can also see who else is in this approval routing trail. So who else needs to look at this besides myself? Now, in this case, it is just me. It could be multiple people. It could be departmental. It could be based on a dollar amount, a sliding dollar amount. So lots of different options for setting up approvals. So once I've looked at this and I'm ready to approve it, I'll go ahead and approve this. And approving it means that I'm going to take it to the next step in the process. So now that it has been approved, let's come back to our purchasing area, and let's take that purchase requisition to the next step in the process. And that would be to convert it from a requisition to a purchase order. Now, this is the automated process. This is no re-entry of data. Everything that was on the requisition got dropped over to the purchase order. All I need to do is send that to neighborhood printers. Once they get it, they're going to fulfill that request for those brochures. They're going to send me those brochures, and I'm going to receive those in. So I've received those in to my warehouse or to my front office. And a few days later, my accounting team is going to get the vendor invoice, and they're going to match that back to make sure that they got billed correctly, and they're going to enter the vendor invoice number. Once we've done that, we've gone from purchase requisition to approval to purchase order, receiving, all the way to vendor invoice. So now I have the ability to look at the history tab, and here are all the steps that we just went through together. Everything is documented, user date and time stamped. And again, I have the ability to talk to someone about these transactions, or I could even email this information to someone if I chose to. Once this invoice is paid, I will have the payment details here as well. So that is an automated business process. We have several of those in Intacct. I just shared one with you, which was the procure to pay process. Another area that we have that utilizes that same flow is in order entry. So you see here, you could start with a quote, you could start with a sales order, you can convert that quote to a sales order, fulfill that order, and then create a sales invoice. Now, again, the beauty of this is, if this is not your process, you can change this process. You can add different steps in this flow. You can create the transactions as you need them in your particular process. So we've covered 3 different areas today. We've covered visibility. We've looked at some of the flexibility within the product, and we've also looked at a business process, an automated, streamlined business process in procure to pay. So now what I'd like to do is to come back to our slides. And again, these are 3 areas that everyone can take advantage of being more efficient, having access to your information, and being able to see that information in a real-time view through those role-based dashboards. We believe that Sage Intacct is the only solution to really accommodate visibility, automation, and integration. So whether you are looking to just focus on your financial management solution and integrate some other applications in, or if you're just looking for a better way to access your information, to get to your data, to automate your processes, Sage Intacct is the only solution to do all of this. I'd like to leave you with one metric today, and that is, when we poll our customers, and we do quarterly surveys, we have found that 85% of our clients wish that they had switched sooner. So today, what I'd like to offer up is an opportunity for you to learn more about Sage Intacct from the team. And at this time, I will stop and ask if there are any questions in the Q&A that I can answer before I turn it over to Janine.
All right, Linda, we actually did have a few questions come in over the course of your presentation. So I'll just shoot them at you. All right. Somebody asked, is there a module for fundraising that keeps track of donors like Razor's Edge?
So we partner for fundraising applications. We certainly can take information from Razor's Edge. If you're using it today and you want to continue to use it, we can take the information from Razor's Edge and pull it in to our financial engine. There are other donor management solutions that we partner with as well, so those can be brought in. We do not have ourselves a native fundraising application.
Okay. And then someone's asking, could I use the multi-entity function to manage different regions with different budgets, or is there a better way to manage multiple regions within one entity?
So region may be something that you want to utilize as a dimension rather than as an entity. Entity we think of as a separate tax ID. If these truly are separate entities, companies, then yes, that would be the route to go. However, you can budget across those dimensions. So if region was one of those dimensions, you can budget at that level.
Okay. Is there some budgeting in the core financials?
There is. So in general ledger, there is basic budgeting. So think about how you create your budget today. My guess would be that you might be doing it in Excel. So we have the capabilities to import an Excel spreadsheet to create your budget. You can have as many budgets as you choose to define. So you can manually create the budget or you can import it in from Excel. And then once you have those budgets in that financial report writing tool that I shared today, one of those columns could be your budget column. And when you point to the budget, you'll identify which budget you want to pull in, and then it will fall into that column on your report. So if you wanted to do a standard, actual versus budget report, very easy to do. You also, in that budgeting area, again, remember, you can budget across any or all of those dimensions. So by department, by location, by customer, by vendor, by item, by employee. So you've got all those different dimensions that you can budget by. Now, if you want to go to an advanced budgeting area, there is a separate application that does more advanced budgeting, like what if scenarios, forecasting, that sort of thing. But basic budgeting is part of the native core bundle for accounting.
Great, perfect. All right, just a few more. We'll try to end here on time, but I just have a few more that came in.
Okay.
What is the implementation time for most companies to go live with Sage Intacct?
So without saying it depends, I would tell you my rule of thumb is anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks. So 8 to 12 weeks. It does, in fact, determine, it's determined by what you're implementing. So how much, so what applications, what does our project plan look like? How many people are you able to devote to the project? And, maybe you're working towards some target date. And so we need to really focus on getting that done in a certain time frame. So typically you're going to see 8 to 12 weeks for core accounting. If you get into a more advanced area, maybe some complex billing or maybe some integrations from some other solutions, you could extend that time frame. But I'd use that as a rule of thumb.
Great. We have one more that just came in, so I'm going to have you tackle that one, and then I think any others that come in, we can just address those individually. But in the budget add-on, is there a personnel budgeting? Does the personnel budgeting take into account grade, union group, steps, longevity? I think we do probably have a few government employers on the call today, so I think that's why they're asking that question.
So that would take some deciphering and some planning to answer that and be 100% sure. What would be important would be to understand, where are we capturing that data from? So are those data points and data elements that we have that we can get to? Now, one thing I will mention here that tags to that question. Many times there are fields of information that you have in your current system that maybe you don't see in Sage Intacct. So there's some information that you're tracking today in QuickBooks and you don't see a spot to put that in Sage Intacct. You can add up to 25 custom fields to any object in Sage Intacct. no extra cost. It's not a programming effort. It's something that I can do as a business user. I can go in and create that field, and it can be different types of fields. It could be a date, it could be a text box, it could be a pick list, it could be any number of different types of fields. It could be made to be required or not. So adding these fields does several things. It extends the data elements for you, but it also opens it up for reporting. So all of those custom fields that you add are now available with the report writing tools in Sage Intacct. So in answering that question, I would say that's certainly possible, but I would want to understand what data we needed and where we were going to get that data from in order to be able to display that on a report.
Great. Thank you, Linda. That is all the questions we have today.
Okay, thank you. So I'll let you talk to them about resources and next steps.
Great. Linda, thank you very much for being with us today, and thank you all for attending. We will send a follow-up link to today's recording, and I'd love to talk with you more about Sage Intacct. Thank you very much and have a lovely day.
Thank you. Bye.